Should I call you Dr. Wax?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, we're about to begin with the next presentation for the people standing at the door, particularly Shimon. We're starting. Okay, so the next presenter we have is Dr. Wax, who's going to talk a bit about the Tails operating system. Let's give Dr. Wax a hand.
Thank you. I would like to see a raise of hands of people who have never heard about Tails before or don't know what it is. There's honors, but like, yeah, okay. Someday we'll release a Tails in camel, I promise. Or maybe not, I don't know. Okay. This is my email, this is my fingerprint for my PGP key and stuff like that. Okay, so just to give a small recap and to refresh our brains. Tails is a live operating system that you can start on almost any computer from a DVD or a USB stick or an SD card. And it aims at preserving your privacy and anonymity and helps you to, for example, use the internet anonymously and evade censorship. This is done by using Tor and I2P, where Tor is the default and I2P is an option through a boot like a boot option. Yeah, so all the connections to the internet are forced to go through the Tor network. This is to make like sane and reasonably secure defaults, because what we have kind of learned from the past is that people would download the Tor browser and open it and then start running like, oh, Tor is connected, and then start using Internet Explorer, right? And that's how they fuck up. So we kind of have set like and raised the bar for people to kind of like mess up in that sense. Another good option is like it tries to leave no trace on the computer you are using unless you ask it explicitly. So this kind of means like, you know, if you do your stuff and you do your work and you shut down, it will wipe the memory most of the times if it works on the desktop. And then if you reboot, there's no trace left. Of course, this is a bit of a tougher problem than it seems, because apparently also the video memory has to be wiped, and this is a bit of an unsolved problem at the moment for most of the live operating systems, whether it's Tails, subgraph, or cubes. And it uses some cryptographic tools to, like, for example, encrypt your files, emails, and instant messaging, you know, using PGP or LUX or through OTR, for example. Okay. We're going to talk about some common misconceptions about Tails, which I would really like to address, where we are, the roadmap for the future, and then a bit like how to contribute. Okay, so a few common misconceptions is that I don't know who came up with it, but we are definitely not NSA proof. This is invented by a bunch of journalists who have no idea what they're talking about. So I would really like to stress that we are like totally not NSA proof and nobody is. So that's one part debunked. Another one is that people always say like, wow, like I never see Tails people. Like I thought you folks were like super anonymous and like clandestine and yada yada. But like here's somebody on stage, right? And like most of us gather at like the CCC Congress and some other international conferences. And we don't claim to be super secure, unlike some popular belief. Yeah, this kind of goes hand to hand with the NSA proof stuff. I mean, we don't claim to be like a nation state adversary proof or something like this. So having that cleared up, where are we? So we are still alive. We've been around for like a couple years now. We are around like 20 people. More or less, who came to the development summit that we had quite recently. This used to be like just a couple of people, so we have grown in terms of like developers, coders, sysadmins, translators, community people who write the grants and stuff like this. We're at the moment based on Debian Jessie, and somewhere next year we'll be based on Debian Stretch, so Debian 9. This is quite an undertaking to like port an operating system to support most of the stuff and like port the test suite that we have, because we test every release and every ISO and every branch that we push, and go through like an extensive test suite that we build and maintain, which is quite a bit of work. and I'll come to that afterwards. And we are, we're still alive. We're still doing good. We're still doing good, and we have some big plans for the future, which I would like to talk about. So, I hope it's more or less visible, actually. So part of the roadmap is like we would like to have a better translation platform. We're still deciding about this, but we really like to make it easier for people who would like to contribute translations, to make it easier for them, because at the moment it's two transifex and it's hard to kind of see the context of where the string is being used for people to translate. We've been experimenting with WebLate, for example, and that seemed to be quite an interesting platform for people to use. Debian is also experimenting with that, and then there's another one from Mozilla that we are experimenting with, and we hope to make a decision on this somewhere this year or early next year. Another one is that we would really like to get rid of Pigeon, because Pigeon is quite a horrible IM client, as we all know. So people can contribute to this. I'll get back to this on how to do this. If anybody is really into I2P, our last person who maintained it and made Debian packages out of it, like disappeared. We have no idea where this person is. Then another one was going to take over, but that person also disappeared. So if you want to be the next person and disappear, you should talk to me afterwards. We really also need more help with writing automated tests. This is a bit of maybe like a boring thing, but it would make the lives of our release managers who like go to like a 24-hour release cycle to get an ISO out to be less stressful. And in the end, ISOs may get pushed out like a lot earlier, like less than 24 hours, and that will be really great for the mental health of a lot of people involved. Another thing is that we're going to work on reproducible builds. This means like getting more packages that we rely on to build reproducibly inside Debian, and hopefully at some point we'll be able to do like deterministic ISO builds. But the deterministic ISO builds are like quite far away. So this is like the kind of long-term goal that we hope to work to, where the reproducible builds is the kind of like short-term goal that we hope to achieve rather soon at some point. Another one is that if you boot Tails, at some point you get a question like, do you want to use more options, yes or no? This has been re-engineered and gone through extensive user experience testing with the people at Numa in Paris, for example. And we hope to ship it rather soon now. I think there might even be some experimental builds up to test it out. If you want to be like involved in stuff like this, there's like we have a dedicated Tails UX mailing list where stuff like this gets discussed. And it's also very good if you want to do some usable security things and get up to date about this and work on that, then this is the right place to start working on it. Another way is like time syncing. If you are amnesiac, that's a kind of like tough problem because we rely on that the computer knows that we all are all in UTC. And if the clock is too much off for you to connect, like the clock is off between you and the Tor god that you want to connect to, you have a bit of a problem because you won't be able to connect. So we want to invent a better way to do this. At the moment, people point towards Tor and say, Tor has fixed this problem, but we have like totally not fixed this problem. That is like a really crappy solution, what we have right now. So we'd really like to improve this. And I think this goes for Unix as well, and probably some other operating systems that are out there, like maybe Subgraph as well. So there's like common problems that we have that need solving and discussion. And I'll get back to that. Another one is that we would really like at some point to store the Tor state, which means that because you are amnesiac, if you don't set up persistence, then you connect to a random God node every time you connect to the internet. And that might mean that at some point you might connect to like a bad God node. at some point, and there's no way for us to prevent that at the moment. And there's some attacks like replay attacks where you could like replay the consensus. So this is a bit of a kind of a difficult problem that we're facing right now, and we hope to get this done with, but we really like more eyes on solutions to this problem, and come up with proposals that we could review. People have been discussing this over the years, but it would be really great if we could actually come up with a pretty sane proposal, like fix this problem and like be done with it. That'd be really great. So now we've come to everyone's favorite part of the discussion always. It's this called geosecurity. If you ever been to DevConf, then now it's time to drink, as far as I understand. Thank you, Maker. So the problem is that Tails is a bit more complicated because we have like multiple file systems stacked on each other, and then there's now geosecurity in Debian, which is great, but we need the RFS pet set to be applied to the same Debian patches and the geosecurity patches, and they kind of like not merge very well. So we need somebody to maintain that. And if that happens for every release inside Debian, then we could actually ship it to our users. So I think the requirement is like a pretty good kernel hacker who knows about geosecurity quite in depth and RFS and Debian patch sets. So that's probably no one in the world, unless you like try to like learn this for like a while. So this is quite a challenge because people say like, why don't you ship geosecurity? Like it's easy, you know, just like get the patch set in and be done with it. But it's like a lot more complicated if you want to do it right. And we are not kernel hackers, so we don't want to get burned and like be flamed like 2 months later because we implemented it wrongly. So we'd rather be safe than sorry, right? Another cool thing is that by Tails 3.0, we finally moved from 32-bit userland to 64-bit userland. There's almost no 32-bit users at the moment, except for the people who might use like x60s from which are like 32-bit. So these people have to upgrade at some point and get like the more obscure 64-bit boards maybe. And then, as George has been talking about in his talk, somebody has been working on Tails server, which is a bit of an experiment at the moment, where people can boot up Tails. Like it's like a bit of a special version where there's like a graphical interface where you could say, I would really like to set up a Mumble server, and it's like a GUI. You could say like generate onion address, and it will generate the onion address, set up like a password for it, which you can then send out to your friends over whatever channel you want, and then people could have Mumble conversations over Tor, for example, or set up an XMPP server, maybe an ISC server. So this is a bit of the long-term goal that we would like to have, and that hopefully it will be useful for some people to host Tor hidden service applications using a more or less reasonably secure like operating system in this thing with some sane defaults. I think there might be some experimental builds up if you look around in the mailing lists, especially Tails Dev. So if you're interested in that, you should check that out. Okay, yeah. So yeah, it's the geosecurity thing. I kind of spoke about it, but if you're interested in actually like doing the hard work, that'd be great, because this is the kind of like thing that is super complicated for us, and we don't want to do it if we mess it up. Also drink. Okay, so we kind of have reached the how to contribute to Tails part. For people who are not very familiar with how we do things, it's often a bit of a bureaucratic process. But by bureaucratic, it kind of means like we want to do the right thing and like come up with pros and cons about the possible solutions that we might have to fixing the problem that we have. So we often work in kind of like groups, for example. So for today, there was a meeting about shipping a kind of like persistent seed to bootstrap the entropy from, because if you're live CD, then you kind of miss entropy to like start with. So we had a long meeting about this, and then there's been some people who have been proposing some ideas on possibly how to fix this problem. And then we kind of store all this information on the blueprint. So the blueprint is this kind of like experimental like thing where we like push a bunch of ideas, and then we have a meeting like once a month about this, and kind of discuss the solutions and kind of like check what people have been up to by trying to fix this problem. And then it's also a good way that at some point we'll like, people are like free to like modify the blueprint, but at least in the future people can look back and say, okay, we made the decisions because of this and this and this reason, and it will solve this and this and this, and we'll protect against this and this and this. So it's more like people to kind of understand the reasoning on why we fixed it in like a particular way. I think this is very useful, not only for like other free software projects that are out there, it's also to reason why we ship certain things and why we don't ship certain things, and how we fix certain stuff. I think this is very important, especially because I don't see a lot of projects like other projects doing this. And yes, it is more work, but it's like work that other people can like understand and learn from as well. So having that said, we could really use your help. There's a bunch of stuff that if you are like interested in it, for example, in doing some sysadmin stuff, you won't get access to the servers, obviously. But there's some ways to like set up the same environment that we run on our server using Puppet, for example. So if you like run all of our, you could basically replicate our infrastructure by setting up a bunch of Puppet stuff that like runs all the same scripts that we have, and then you could work on that. So basically, it's like infrastructure as code, which allows people to contribute to us without us having to need to give them access to our servers or our infrastructure. At the moment, all of our like CI stuff happens through like Puppet and Jenkins. So there's a bunch of issues that if you would like to work on them, then this is the correct link. Our bug tracker is currently hosted on https://labs.riseup.net/code/project/tails. But there's also an URL on the Tails website itself. So if you go to tails.boom.org and then click on contribute, then you get a list of like things that you might be interested in, like writing or sysadmin or coding stuff, and then get a reference on where you would need to look for the right place for the right information. So another thing is the test suite. So let's say you're really interested in writing test cases for us, which would be really great. It's basically based on Seculi and Cucumber. I think we're like one of the few open source projects that actually tests like an operating system and like the programs inside it for the functionality, which often actually means like simulating the Tor network or simulating like a wireless network or like trying to burn some kind of DVD thing, and make sure that nothing breaks if we push like a new branch for this. So basically, when we push something new, we hope to actually also write like a test suite for it before we actually release it, especially for like big programs, like say a mail client, for example, right? Or like like a new Tor version. Like we hope to test things out before we actually ship it to the user, so we know that when we ship it to the user, that actually most of the stuff probably works fine, and the amount of regressions is very, very low. So if you're interested in helping out with this, most of the stuff is sort of done. So if you would like to like test certain things, it could be sort of easy to follow, and it's mostly written in sort of Ruby scripts. But I think we should maybe at some point write some more documentation on how to kind of contribute to the test suite, because it's kind of you need to have some experience with it or see somebody how you like kind of solve certain things, because sometimes you have to make screenshots, and it does like OCR over an image, which is kind of like a tedious process. But in the end, it kind of does the job, but it's a bit of a tedious process. So I hope at some point that we create some kind of, I don't know, video tutorial on how to get involved in this. Another thing is, but something which everybody could contribute to and from, is that it would be really cool if people who are involved into Debian and maintain packages to rebuild all packages for like a PIC and FPy. This will benefit Debian, this will benefit Subgraph, this will benefit Unix, it will benefit cubes, it will benefit Tails, and the security of packages in general. This will probably be a bit of a tedious process because it's hard and like, I mean, builds will fail, but it will be really worth the time to harden packages because most of the stuff is not really like fully protected by like hardened compiler flags, and this is a big problem actually. Well, Ubuntu does a lot better in this respect than Debian. And then another thing is that there's the Secure OS mailing list, which is a bit of a consortium, like by people like doing development on Tails, Subgraph, Unix, cubes, and some others, where people kind of like have discussions about common problems that we have and try to come up with solutions to, you know, like the persistent Tor state or like time syncing, and some other problems like wiping of the video memory, for example, which is a bit of an unsolved problem at the moment. And try to come up with ways on how we could hopefully collaborate better and see maybe how some of these operating systems might morph in the future, which will be interesting. So if you're interested in that, it's a bit low volume at the moment, but maybe in the future it will be a bit more higher volume again. So if you're interested in that, then the URL is https://secure-os.org. This is a bit of the presentation. I'm happy to answer questions or like show some stuff on how we like do things. And if you have any questions, then I'm happy to answer them. I think we got a good half an hour, more or less. So we'd like to make it a bit more interactive than me talking for like 45 minutes, which might be a bit boring. So if there's any questions, quickly drink some water. Hanno. So probably the requirement is how it should probably look like at the moment, is that it should just do XMPP. So that might probably mean either the Tor browser, like the Tor IAM bundle, or like Core IAM. That seems to be the sort of like more sane solution. But this is, I mean, this is, nothing is like set in spades. So this could all change. And most of this discussion is planned to be somewhere next year. And somebody will have to get it into Debian, I think. So yeah. I see. I mean, some of these, yeah, I mean, I think some of these solutions are good solutions, but if the solutions that are kind of new and sort of sexy are not being shipped to end users, and we ship it instead, then we are like super fingerprintable over the network, which is also, sorry? I mean, sure. I mean, yeah, that'd be the ideal world that I'd like to live in. But yeah. I mean, it's often a bit of a tedious process. Yeah, leave. Right. Yeah. Yeah, but we'd like to sort of, I mean, it's not like the end goal, but we'd like to make it sort of hard to not be identifiable over the network. Um, but this is, I mean, this is a bit of a tough problem to like sort of solve. Um, I mean, ideally, you would like to have the sort of like, I mean, the local network is kind of different because it has different kind of adversaries, but the larger internet at scale, um, if we could look like something that is like Chrome OS, then yeah, that'd be easier. Um, yeah, it's a bit of a tough problem. Leave. Not really at the moment, but we'd really like somebody to do that. Wink, wink. Thanks for volunteering. uh, Yeah, I think there was a proposal for this where somebody actually came up with the same idea, but it was like a couple of years ago and nobody really pursued it. But this would be actually, yeah, quite interesting as a solution. Right, yeah, so it would make sense. So, yeah, yeah. Sure. Because I mean, like I said before, like Tails doesn't aim to be like the sort of like holy grail against nation state adversaries. There's a lot more threats that Tails like protects against, like violent stalkers or like people like trying to beat you up in a collective way of living, or like evil boyfriends or things like this. I mean, we as hackers are kind of like always like the state is like super like annoying, which is true, right? But at the same time, there's like a lot more adversaries that Tails could protect against, and we don't have the illusion that it can like protect against these things. And like, yeah, I mean, stuff gets hacked, right? Like whether it's Tails or cubes or something else. But But the kind of problem is that we have the unsecure browser, because sometimes you are like in some kind of hotel, you have to like click through or airport stuff, and then it gets more complicated than that. Life sucks, man. It's true. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So this time stuff, I'm interested in that, but you need time before you have the Tor connection because it's before.
Yeah, because if the time is off, then Tor will not be able to connect. So it's a bit of a chicken and an egg problem that we're facing. But somebody came up, I think, with something clever to use Tor. But I'm not exactly sure what the actual solution is from the top of my head.
I'm not sure if it's doing today, but I can tell you that 6 months or a year ago, it was doing a thing where it was trying to
Hmm.
and then it would restart core.
Right.
Connect to another directory server probably, and maybe it has a different validity date, so you might need to actually restart core a few times to get the directory connection.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then it would update the consensus time, and then it would restart core again, and then it
Hmm.
finally runs this HTTP gating over core.
Right, right, right. Okay. Yeah.
They weren't using TLS time like TLS because they're using the validity date on the TLS certificate when they connect to the directory server.
Ah, I see.
So it's like a month
Wow.
long time, but good enough for that directory server to then reboot. So we talked to a different one.
Hmm.
Also, instead of TLS date, you could use HTTP date. Yeah.
But would the store you receive the timestamp of the relay in that instruction before you actually have created the connection?
Right.
The first connection that you made with your timestamp will be wrong, but you will at least learn n numbers of timestamps from all the relays, and you'll be able to make the separate new circuit from the systems that they accept.
Yep. There's still a question.
What about persistent boot? Do you recommend it, and do you use it? And if you use it, then wouldn't it be like pissing yourself to get warm?
To get what?
To be warm. It's saying in Danish.
To be warm? Oh, I see. Okay.
Boot, why would you do it if leaving with it, as long as you shut it down, everything would be ready?
Right. I mean, there's some use cases, and some use cases. For example, apparently there's a bunch of people who are using Tails to like store like Bitcoin wallets and stuff like this to have like some kind of like cold in some kind of cold storage like way, which is something that we didn't design it for, but it's being used in this way. Another one is that journalists have been using it to store documents. Sometimes these Tails machines are not connected to the internet, but at least you could move some applications to it and like have some kind of air gap system where you could look through the information. And other people, you know, I use it to store my offline PGP signing key, for example, to have like a sort of clean environment and an air gap way to store it this way. So I mean, there's like a bunch of possibilities on why persistence is an interesting thing. But yeah, you have to be sort of careful and like do some threat analysis on how you want to, you know, do it and use it.
My question with that was that if you accidentally boot into the signal and do stuff and shut down.
You can't really boot accidentally in persistence mode because you have to like put in a password. I mean, you have to be like super drunk to like to fuck that up, dude. I mean, come on.
Really drunk and you forgot the password, and
And you need a hand, so I have to come and like hold your hand. I mean, what is the question?
yeah, well, okay.
What the fuck? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you have any plans of putting some kind of encryption system into the Tails OS again before we have the current edition of it. It's called Bearcrypt.
Um,
Press shift and you can type Bearcrypt and it boots up and you have Bearcrypt. You can put in your hardware or whatever and decrypt things and use that. We had that before. I think we removed it.
we removed TrueCrypt. Yeah. 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 This is a bit of a touchy subject, indeed. But I mean, ideally, yeah. I mean, I hear this request from people working on files, and I mean, you can open it through the command line, so it's still in there, but it's sort of hidden. It still is. There's even documentation for it on how to do it. But because we write documentation for like everything, man, it's like it's all there. But ideally, we'd like to have like a GUI for it, and like merging this into GNOME disks will be maybe the right way to do it. It shouldn't be a lot of work. There might even be money for it from the GNOME Foundation. So if you're like a sort of like C coder, be interested in that, you can totally do it. And GNOME will probably like give you money for it. Yeah, this is the. I see. Yeah, like everything that's like TrueCrypt or came out of TrueCrypt is sketchy. Yes. Yeah, I mean, but you can't make volumes. You can only decrypt them. Yeah, 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 yeah. But I guess, I mean, I guess the big kind of issue is that cross-platform, like encryption, like containers, is like a sort of tough problem. It seems like nobody's sort of willing to work on it, and the people who do work on it kind of come up with like some crazy solutions sometimes that I have no idea about. Yeah, yeah. But I think there's a ticket about getting VeraCrypt into Tails, but this might involve getting it into Debian first. So if you're up for the work, you could totally do it. Okay. Any other questions? Flames.